Shabbat Shalom, friends. There is a fantastic scene in the movie Annie Hall when Woody Allen and Diane Keaton grab a bite to eat at a diner in Manhattan, and the waiter comes over and Woody Allen says, "I'll have the corned beef." And then Diane Keaton says, "Oh yeah, I'll have pastrami on white bread with mayonnaise, tomatoes, and lettuce." And for the great majority of people who watch that movie, the rest of the scene just goes on. There's nothing interesting about what just occurred. But for Jews and for New Yorkers, who after all are all Jewish, regardless of their background or ethnicity or even their religion, the joke has already been made. And the rest of the scene, and really the rest of the movie, plays off this one exchange. A pastrami sandwich on white bread with mayonnaise, tomatoes, and lettuce is delicious. It's a good sandwich. It's just not very Jewish. And that becomes the metaphor for the cultural differences in the relationship. There's an underlying tension that's always there. And it's best illustrated through the image of a pastrami sandwich on white bread with mayonnaise, tomatoes, and lettuce. Over the past few weeks, maybe even the last couple of months, you may have noticed that we've had in our Shabbat services the addition of something that we're a little unfamiliar with in shul culture. We've had a lot of applause. And now, I have a theory about why that is, and we can get into why I think that that's been happening more and more. But I want to just first say something. Applause is not bad. Clapping for a simcha, clapping for a beautifully sung piece of liturgy, a well-delivered sermon, or even, as we saw last week, a masterful Haftorah. I do have to say it's the first time ever in my life that I've ever heard applause for a Haftorah, which is pretty incredible. It's not bad. It's actually a very good thing. It's just kind of like pastrami on white bread with mayonnaise, tomatoes, and lettuce, if you know what I mean. So before I move on to the more important parts of my words this morning, I would like to offer, if I may, some alternatives to the applause that feel a little bit more like corned beef. Cantor Margolis here can serve as a fine example of giving out, when deserved, a Yiddisha and Yeshivisha classic, which is offering the words Yasher Koach, or Shkoyach, in good Ashkenazi parlance. This is an old phrase that quite literally means, "May your strength be straightened," but what it comes to mean colloquially is "well done." And also, just as an aside, for modern Yiddish speakers, it also can mean "thank you." But it is a beautiful way of just saying, "Well done, I'm here, I've recognized what you've accomplished." Shkoyach. Alternatively, the yeshivas of Ashkenazi Jewry have given us some incredible Torah and traditions, but nothing as incredible as Barb and I's favorite expression of praise, the lofty and highly esteemed psht. Exactly. I have no idea where this comes from, by the way, but I am now giving myself some homework to find out, but it has been, for centuries, a great way to show approval and accolades, especially when everyone does it together. And if you want to hear, let's try it one time. 1, 2, 3. Psh. Psh. It's good. But now I want to get to something a little more serious, because I think that this is important. A huge part of me doesn't want to give this Devar Torah at all. Because I think with so much craziness in this world, with so much hate and division and anger and fear, the last thing we should be worried about is showing enthusiasm at shul. Truly, there is a litany of things that are tearing us apart in so many different ways that the last thing we should care about is people clapping at shul. Because there is honestly nothing that Jewish clergy should want more than to have a chapel or a sanctuary filled with people who are not just present, but listening and fully immersed in the prayer and the Torah before them. I mean, that's the dream. That is what we want. And it is truly, by the way, a dream to have a Haftarah chanted so beautifully and engagingly that it inspires a visceral reaction from the Kahal. I am never going to get upset at that. But what I do want to express is that I think there is a real fear that clergy feel, and I want to name it and explore it because that fear is expressed in two different parts. One, the fear that our davening and that our Torah becomes so frontal that it feels like performance. We never want to be praying at you. We want desperately, deep in our hearts, to be praying with you. And I think there is a fear that exists there. And that second part is a fear that Jewish tradition, not just Jewish people, but Jewish tradition becomes assimilated into a wider secular culture. Now, why I want to explore that is because I also recognize that that fear is juxtaposed with something else that is also incredibly important and deserving of our attention, which is the difficult truth that people want more from prayer and services. And we have to take that seriously. Services are long. Ours, by the way, are shorter than many in the conservative movement, but they can feel long. They're in a language that the great majority of Jews cannot read fluently or proficiently. And if we can, the actual meaning, the superficial meaning, not the deeper levels of the meaning, but even just the very superficial, the pshat, can get lost on us. And there is such a steep learning curve to the ritual, the choreography, what to do and when to do it, and most importantly, the why behind it, that it is so much easier to throw in the towel and find Yiddishkeit in a different place altogether. I get it. I've been there. In so many ways, I'm still there. By the way, the idea that our ancestors have of wanting us to be fully connected with devekut, to cling to God in full spirituality with all of our ruach, with all of our soul, with all of our intention for 2.5 hours, it's preposterous. It's hard. It is hard to connect in prayer. So trust me, when we actually find time and space, when we can gather in the chapel and find moments where we are so in it together that the natural response is to applaud, the last thing I want to do is say, stop it. And so that's not what I'm going to say. What I am going to say is that we hear you. We hear where that applause is coming from. And we want to uplift it, and we want to celebrate it, and we want to find as many opportunities as we possibly can for us all to feel connected and comfortable and free enough that we can express ourselves with love and appreciation and kavanah, because that is a bracha, and we should treat it as such. And we also need to continue to build together, to shape our services together, to navigate where we are feeling the ruach and where we are not, so that when we pray together, when we learn together, when we celebrate who we are together, that our response is true and authentic and collaborative, and importantly, that it's the corned beef. That it is an expression of the Yiddish neshama, the tarbut Yehudit, the current that flows through who we are as a people. So please hear me. The last thing I want is for our sacred space and our sacred time to feel like the vestiges of decorous German Protestantism. I don't want us to sit on our hands in deafening silence, sitting and standing with some kind of obedient reverence like we're in a presentation at a museum. Because that is the opposite of what Jewish prayer is. And it's not what Jewish learning is. Our tradition is about closeness, hamishness, emotion, drama, and sincerity. And doing it right is the key to reigniting the spark of our peoplehood in an age where we are made day in and day out to be numb to the world around us. So what I ask this morning is that we talk. We talk to one another. We shake off the tethers of our real fears of feeling inadequate or judged or less than, so that we can wrestle with our Yiddishkeit together and explore how we can set a new standard and a new love for the way that we pray and the way that we learn. And then I think we will find that we won't need a menu to know exactly what we're ordering. That we can just give a nod to one another and keep going with a smile, proud of what we are building, proud of what we are creating, because it is rooted in something deep and something beautiful and something that is rooted in the story of us. Shabbat Shalom.